Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei and I'm so excited to paint with you today. Today we're going to be creating this simple and for beginners leaf composition where we're going to be using a wet-on-wet technique to create these beautiful blends in colors. And we're going to learn to let go a little bit and let the magic of wet-on-wet do its job to create this very beautiful color palette of different leaves. Now, you may have watched the the Try It Tuesday leaf collaging where we were practicing leaf shapes and layering them one on top of the other. Well, we're going to continue that a little bit with this project, but we're going to break those collages apart. So we practiced our leaf shapes and now we're going to put some of that into practice into an actual piece here. So the difference is we're going to be doing this wet on wet. We're not going to be applying the paint till after we've put water on already. And we're going to be mixing lots of different colors right on the page. So let's get started. All right, so here we are. I'm working in my Bauhong sketchbook today, watercolor sketchbook, and I am going to be using my core watercolor palette, QOR by Golden, and you can find links to all this stuff in the description of this video, as well as other supplies they recommend for beginners or things that I use on a daily basis. I have some clean water here over to the side, and I'm going to be using my Princeton Velvet Touch size 10 brush. And I might throw in a smaller brush later. I'll grab like one of my Princeton Select size 4 or something like that. But we're really going to start out with my size 10. So the first thing I'm going to do is, or that you should do, is kind of pick out some colors that you want to work with. Now, I want these leaves to be bright, to be colorful, but to also have that kind of natural tone or quality to them in terms of having more slightly muted colors. So not bright phthalo blue, but a desaturated phthalo blue. So I used phthalo blue here, but I added a little bit of orange. I have a hair. Whoops. So thinking about our complementary colors. So blue is a great color, this phthalo blue. Let me take that out of the glare there. And then if I add a little orange to it, it desaturates it. Sorry, I used a little bit too. So you can see here we get a more muted blue-green color or gray. So just thinking about complementary colors, letting them mix on the page a little bit. You can use whatever colors you want. You could use super bright colors if you want, but I'm just thinking, I love purples and greens and yellows and oranges together, but I do want them to be slightly muted. I don't want them to be bright, rainbow color. All right, so with that being said, you can prepare whatever colors you want. I'm gonna use some of these, but I'm also going to be picking right out of my palette for a few. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wet my brush, and I am going to, just with water, I'm gonna draw a stem. I'm not gonna worry about the stem too much, and I'm gonna start to create a couple of leaf shapes. Now, it's gonna be hard for you to see until I put the actual paint on. So I'm just gonna create 2 leaf shapes with my brush with water. I tried to leave the water a little bit tinted so you can see a little bit there. And now I'm going to pick up some of my colors, and I'm just gonna drop them in various places. So you can see the shapes now. I'm gonna rinse my brush off. I'm gonna drop in a little green with this one. And then you can just let it do its thing. You can move the paint around a little bit. If you're like, oh, I just want a little bit more paint on this side or a little hint of it, just move around what's in there, but try not to mess it up too much. Try not to blend it all together, or you're not gonna get the same effects. So just get started painting leaves, and you can do, I try to do a couple, so that way I'm not rinsing off my brush every single time. Sorry, I'm just, and if the leaves touch, they'll blend together. So I do still like using green for this to give kind of a semblance of I want it to be colorful, but still have kind of that earth tone green undertone to it. And I can always let these dry, which I probably will do. Let's do more purple over here. And I can even pick up some orange. Give a little pop of color. Now I'm not going to worry about the stem yet. We'll put that in later. I did put one in, like a water one, which I can still see very lightly myself, just to use as a guide as I kind of build my leaf shapes around it. So using my brush and water. And we're going to throw in some different shapes soon. So building in different levels of this branch. Actually, let's pick up some of this. I'm gonna pick up some red in here in my palette. Wasn't very wet. It's a little ultramarine blue. Throw in some other blues in there. This is a great exercise for those of you who have some control issues, who really need things to be really well controlled, and you're trying to paint a little looser. I'm telling you, just drop the color in and move on. It might be painful for you. You might not love it as you're doing it, but just keep going and try to trust the process. And then you can step back and evaluate. So now I'm getting into the stem a little bit. You see, I just pulled a little color out of this already existing color on the page, just filling in my stem, and it's all different colors there because I'm just pulling from what is already wet on the page. These are pretty dry up here already though. All right, I'm gonna keep going. I'm going to try to create a couple of smaller little cluster here. And as things dry, I can layer on top of it as well. I don't want to get too layery, but I kind of want a few pops of brighter color. Like that bright orange there is really nice. Just kind of in the family with all of the rest of these, or juxtaposed to the rest of these more natural colors. Slightly muted colors, throwing in a little pop of color can be really nice. You know what, I think I'm going to add some magenta. Which can be a little jarring, for sure. This purple magenta combo here. Few smaller. And with that magenta, I'm going to throw in a little green, because red or pink, so magenta and green are opposite on the color wheel. So when they mix together, they end up desaturating each other. They neutralize each other. So throwing that green around that pink, it's going to bring it down a little bit. And as they blend into each other, wet on wet, it's just going to bring the tone down a little bit. But I still get that little pop of magenta in there, but it's not too overwhelming. All right. So if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say complementary colors and they desaturate each other, I have another video all about mixing complementary colors. I'll try to link it here and in the description so you know what the heck I'm talking about. I have a little cobalt teal over here I'm going to throw in. And look, just dropping that on the stem and letting it travel. Ooh, so pretty. So, so pretty. More sap green with these. As far as composition goes, I'm just kind of building almost a bouquet of leaves. I'm gonna go throw in some more shapes in a minute, and I'm gonna throw in some other shapes on the bottom. This I don't want up there. We're gonna do some like roundish berry colors. And you can leave like really light. Let's play with, I'm gonna do some Payne's gray. Make this like navy color. Throw that in there. Boop, 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 boop. In a few spots. All right. These are pretty dry. This one, I'm gonna go over it and I'm gonna throw a little magenta on there. So nothing says you can't layer wet on wet on top of wet on wet. All right, I'm gonna throw some orange, some brighter orange on here, just on the bottom. Let it travel. So I'm just looking for some spots to increase some contrast. Throw a little purple in here. And I'm just gonna do a few little leaves down here, or maybe even like long leaves. Here we go. Just to give some balance down here, I'm gonna use this cobalt teal color. I'm just pulling color right out of what's already here. And yeah, I'm gonna throw some magenta down here. A little magenta, a little orange. Didn't make these as wet as I should have. And I'm gonna throw some green, some sap green down here. Kind of balance this out. All right, so I'm gonna let this dry. And then I'm gonna come back in with some other shapes. I'm gonna do some berry shapes or roundish shapes and maybe some kind of a layer of greener leaves at the bottom. So let's let that dry and then we'll move on. All right, we're back. I'm gonna clean out one of my wells here because I want to create, we're gonna be using browns and burgundies, or magenta, a magenta color. You know, we're going to desaturate it a little bit, but I want to create these really bold, contrasty colors. So I am going to pull out a bunch of magenta. And this is for the berries that we're going to do. This over here is already a brown, so I don't want to waste it. I'm going to use it, but I'm going to doctor it up. So what was originally in here was, let's see, it was a Quin Gold or any yellow, like orangish color. So all brown is dark orange. And you could add green to it to kind of desaturate it. Orangey yellow and green. And then you can also add even a little, if you really want to darken it, but it's going to make it a much cooler brown, a Payne's gray. Let's add a little bit more of this orange color. we have a nice dark brown. We got a magenta, but that magenta is not going to stay magenta. We're not going to leave it like that. Add a little bit of green to it. Make it more of a burgundy color. I'm going to pull out Dioxizine Purple and Magenta. And these are kind of the colors I'm going to use for my little berries that I'm going to throw in there. And I could even throw in a little purple in here. Yeah, desaturate the yellow a little bit. So browns are often just a dark orange. So if you can make orange and darken it, throw in a little purple. All right, so I'm just gonna put so these are not wet on wet. I'm just using my smaller size 4 Princeton Select brush. I'm just gonna overlap some twigs here, put some there. I'm gonna have one kind of in front here. You can see I'm letting my brush skip a little bit. I'm not too worried about it. I'm gonna put one behind here. There we go. All right, and now I'm gonna start adding berries. These I am gonna do wet on wet. So I'm gonna put down some water droplets. Don't want them to be too big. I want them like too thick. I don't want it to be like an actual drop on the page, like sitting a raised drop. And then I'm just gonna throw in, boom, 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 some of this color, some of the red, magenta color. Mix it around a little bit, leave some white spots. You can see I'm throwing them on now, even with paint already on my brush, but putting wet in wet. So I put some down, add more color in a different, so I put some down with the burgundy here, or whatever's on my brush, and then I'll drop in a water droplet, or I'll drop in more color, leaving some white space in them. Having them overlap the leaves. Don't be too precious. Making smaller ones. Perfect. And again, you can let these dry and you can add more on layered or clustered together. Love it. This one up here, I don't love the shape of it, but I'm gonna let it dry and then I can always, there we go, spread it out a little bit, refine the shape. I'm gonna add just a drop or two of color in there. Okay, great. So we have some berry shapes on there, and then you could totally leave it just like this. I love this look, but I'm also going to, I'm gonna move my little holder downer clip here, move it up to the top. And along the bottom, I'm actually going to not do wet on wet this time. I'm just gonna create my leaf shapes. I'm not gonna do wet on wet in terms of, I'm not gonna put water down and then fill in the shape with the color. I'm actually going to use my Sap Green and my blue over here. I'll just mix it in with my blue. Again, you can be a purist and like really clean out your palettes. I'm just making colors with the colors I already have on my palette. So I am going to just create like, I don't know what this would be, like a bouquet of leaves down at the bottom here, kind of all going upward in this direction. And as they're drying, so adding water, and I'm moving quickly. These are not perfect little leaves. These are like fast, loose. And you can see I'm creating overlap in texture. I can drop in extra blue and green while they're still wet. That one dried. So I just picked up a bunch of Phthalo Blue, adding a little contrast to a few of them, so making them a lot darker. And letting them bleed. So giving them kind of that same quality as the ones up above. So they're not perfect little leaves. I'm letting them kind of bleed into each other with layering and wet on wet as I add color. I'm just painting in the color first. Or I'm painting in a layer of color first. But then when I drop other color in, it's bleeding from this leaf to that leaf. It's creating there we go. And then I think I will leave it like that. This was so much fun. This will definitely help you loosen up a little, and it creates this really whimsical, bright and vibrant little leaf composition. Helps you practice those leaves some more, but also you can create a full piece with this. That could be quite beautiful using this technique, learning to loosen up, let go, and really lean into that wet on wet, and color mixing on the page can be a lot of fun. Can be nerve-wracking for some of us, but also can be a lot of fun. So thank you so much. I'm Shayna Searcy. Thanks for painting with me today. Don't forget to check out the description for links to supplies and materials, also to my Studio Crew classroom, as well as my social media. Go ahead and join if you are on Facebook, we have Umbrella Arts Academy with Shayna Searcy. It's a group where you can share your own paintings in there as well. So I'd love to see those and create that community there. So thank you so much. Take care, everybody, and happy painting.